Alright, how's it going everybody? This is comic book artist Will Robson here. I tried to make this a fancier video on the computer with OBS and everything, but my computer's being a dill hole. So we're just going to do it this way. Sorry for the microphone quality, but what we're doing is the Patreon draw over. So basically, if you're a member of my Patreon, which is, I probably should have this up, it is Patreon, look at that writing, that makes no sense, /Will Robson. That is my Patreon. We have a great group of people there, all working on comics, and I'm sort of helping them with their art and stuff like that. So if you want some help with your comic book art and sort of having an eye to look at your work immediately, then that's what I'm here to do. So that's what I'm going to do with this today. So I've got here 4 different artists here from my Patreon. I'm going to go through the work they sent in and do a little draw over. So starting with J or GVS. Now, the first thing I see when I look at this page is I'm a little worried about the borders here, because the way a comic book page works is if this is going to print, then this will be cut off. This will be cut off. This will be cut off, and this will be cut off. So this is actually how the page will look when it's printed. And as you can see, immediately these heads are sort of being taken off. This space here, this little bump here, is the space you have essentially in between the printed page. So you got to be really careful about that. That's why all of this area here, if you see these little dots here, this is the safe zone. So this is where it's safe. So when you look at this page, I just know that when it goes to print, it's going to get sliced, which is not ideal. So yeah, these heads will get cut off here. This will be way too close to the margins. It will be, it's just a bit tight. So that's something to definitely watch out. I'm going to keep that layer on actually as we go. Let's get another thing going here. Okay, so let's take a look here. Now I plugged in already the spot blacks because before we would go in, this is what was handed in, and this is a common thing that comic book artists, the pencilers do. They put a little X in to indicate to the inker that needs to be filled with black. So I just went ahead and filled it with black so I had a better look at everything. And I'm sure I missed some spots, like I guarantee that this down here probably is like this or something like that. So let's see. Let's look at just straight storytelling first, shall we? So if we're just talking storytelling, I love that my pens are taking ages to load. This is going really well for me. If we take a look here, let me get a loose nib going. So these guys look like they're being sort of taken off somewhere with some sort of, I don't know, portal that's about to change their atoms or something like that. And these people look pretty Thorish. I don't know if this is supposed to be Thor or it says Immortal Core. So I don't know if that's this right here is supposed to be Thor and this is supposed to be Odin, but it looks pretty much like that. So the other thing is that if it's being cut off like this, I don't know how many speech bubbles are in this page, but if there are a lot of speech bubbles, then I don't know where you would fit them. The letterer would have to start putting the bubbles. Hang on, let's change the tool. The letter would have to do bubbles like this, which is okay, but it just, it's covering up the drawing. You always want to have stuff like down here where the speech bubbles can be in some more of an open spot and not taking away from the art, because you want to see the art, and I'm sure as an artist you want to see your own art anyway. So that's something that I find a bit worrying on this page. Again, you don't know though, because they could be like, no one could be saying anything. It could just have a big sound effect here going like shoo as they're being sucked up. I'm not sure. But this is something that an editor will look at though, because they don't know either. Again, this head here being right here is just way too close to this border. You really want to think about that space, like all of the space here, and try and keep some stuff out of that space. But I mean, the art's very nice, I don't really have a critique on the art. It looks a bit simple for an inker. Like, okay, let's pretend I was the inker. So I would lower the opacity, new ink layer. Oops. Let's say I just get to inking. I mean, so like for instance, this line here, like would it just be translated as a full line? Or would there be room for rendering? You know, I don't know if it's you want to have an inker do more of an interpretation here. I see a couple of little lines down there. Like here, is this supposed to be like this? It's a little bit unclear. I don't know your working relationship with your inker though. But again, if I'm a Marvel editor, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know, like for instance, this line on her face is just going like this. I know that an inker can interpret that in some way, but I don't know. It seems a bit loose. Also, like she doesn't have any definition in her ear here, yet this character does up here. So I'm a little bit confused. I would say that the pencils are just a tiny bit too loose in certain spots. But again, that could just be me overanalyzing it. Let's bump this back up. So, but you know, the figure work, like this face here is obviously excellent, really well drawn face. But when I look at when you look a bit closer, like the straggly beard here, I guess it's more open to interpretation. And these lines here, yeah, an inker could definitely get in there and do a good job. Let's have a look here. This is a slightly bit confusing. I guess an inker could try and do stuff. I just think that what's lacking for me is line weights. Everything is pretty much a dead line, or there's a slightly thicker line over some of the sides. Like, look how thin the lines are on her face here, which is nothing wrong with that. But then suddenly there's this huge thick line on this knee, and this knee is behind the head and the arm. So this would actually be a thinner line than this line and this line, because it would need to be pushed more into the background, if that makes sense. Yeah, so let's move on from this page to the next page. Alright, this is the next page. So here I've got the border going on again. This is a bit better because there's not as much information going on in the background, but again, this is how it will look when it's printed. Definitely love it. When I first saw this page, it took me a while to see it because I had to put in the spot blacks, because at first I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But the moment I put the spot blacks in, I was like, oh, it's a tree. And obviously coloring will definitely help with that. I definitely love the black of the tree and it being over the top of them. I will say the tree itself, it's a little bit muddy, and the lighting, I'm not quite sure, because clearly this is a light source here, right? Yet there's an even amount of renders across the tree. So if I was going to do it, I would keep more of this side of the tree white, maybe a bit less than that, to signify that there's a light source right there. Do you see what I'm saying? So there would be a bit more light coming in, and then probably a reflective light on the other side of the tree. And you can also curve it as well, so it looks like it's just coming from, you know, this tiny bit of orb here. That just adds a bit more depth, and the colorist can definitely do a bit more with stuff like that. Makes sense that these characters would be mostly in shadow. I think I would probably put a rim light on the other side of them, because otherwise you're telling me that the light is only coming from this way. So I think I would add a rim light around the heads. If you can see it, I'll zoom in. So like there would be light here. Like this guy looks like he's blending into the light a bit. You know, you could even get a bit more crazy since it's so light, and you could take away the outer rim on, maybe not everything, but you could certainly remove some of the rim so that we can interpret it that it's getting, you know, they're essentially walking into a light space. You see that? And then also, since it's so light, and I'm just assuming it's light here, I would keep this completely white. This is the light source. This is where all the light's coming from. So when all this stuff shoots out from it, it is the lightest thing on the page. And then as you can see now, it really is starting to pop more. Your eye's automatically drawn towards here because this is a big open white space where you have all these other little tick lines everywhere. The solid blacks in the foreground, which is always good. But here, since it's a big white space, it definitely sticks out more. Let's click undo. As I was drawing on the wrong layer. It doesn't matter. Let's just delete that layer. Okay, now looking at this panel here, I don't know if doing these grays, you know, as an inker, you're working in two colors, black and white. So unless the person you're saying is do a dry brush with all of this stuff, it's a bit unclear what you want that to be interpreted as. And also, the fact that there's this much space on this side, yet if you look over here, there's a little bit more space. So I would probably take all of these guys and move them over just a little bit, so that is this guy in the dead center of this panel? Okay, so he pretty much, as you can see, his head needs to be moved over a little bit. So I would just move all these characters over just a little bit, because the way they're sort of floating there right now. And also, one thing I noticed as well is that, let me look at the first page. So the shot selection you chose, this is great because we're definitely lower than them. So this is called a worm's eye view. So if I was a little worm popping out of my little wormhole with my eyes, then that's the view I get looking up at them, which is great because you want variation in your shots. But the rest of your choices, this is static. So this means that the camera, quote unquote, is on the same level as them. So it's looking right at them, which is fine. But you have it for here as well. I feel like for this shot, you could have done maybe a bird's eye view where you're looking down on the person. So she would be, she would be sitting there with her arm like that and a cape. Come on. Maybe like here, like this. Just to give it a bit of variation to what you're doing. And also, it's also a bit jarring that these characters here are essentially the same size as these. So this becomes really crowded. Maybe for the Thor-like character here, you could have gone with, maybe like a close-up of them like this. So that way, the characters, there's a bit more depth there, and there's room for speech bubbles as well. And it just adds a bit of variety to the page. Since these guys are pretty much the same head size as these guys, it all blurs a bit. Also, with this panel here, I would definitely bring this guy way more into the foreground. In fact, if I take this page, let's just merge it. I think I would have taken this guy, made him a lot bigger in the foreground, and then taken her and maybe shrunk her down a bit. And then obviously, this is going to ruin the page, but the panel itself would be more like that. It's just a bit more dramatic and a bit more in your face. Like, this is comics. The big thing about comics is, let me undo all this stuff I did. The big thing about comics is you got to think about the foreground. So let's say there's a guy in the foreground. And then, let's lower the opacity a bit. He's in like a car park. So there's some car parks here, right? That's the middle ground. And then even further in the background, he's looking at, I don't know, a big tree, right? Or something like that. And maybe even make the tree smaller and make the guy bigger. Because foreground, middle ground, background is how you create depth in your work. I see a lot of comic book artists not doing this when they're starting out. This just immediately creates depth. They got the big guy in the front here, all these cars in the car park really break it up, and then obviously the big focus on the tree, maybe some buildings around the background as well. We've just established depth, and it's really a great thing to do, and it's a really easy way to make your worlds feel lived in. Because if everything is, let's say everything was on the same plane, let's say he was walking in the car park and he was the same size as the car park, and then the tree is here in the front. It just makes it flat, where when you add these in, there's just so much more depth. So try and think more of separating those planes. Now, they always say foreground, middle ground, background. This is obviously foreground, middle ground, background. I think with comics, that's why I made this guy much bigger. It's more extreme foreground. Like, you can make him even bigger. Extreme foreground, middle ground, background. That just create, with comics, you're always trying to turn everything up to 11. You're trying to crank it. It's trying to make it a visually interesting experience. So I would definitely think more about pushing the sizes of the characters you have here. And even this panel, let's duplicate this. This panel at the top here, I would probably take this guy, make him bigger here, and then take these folks and make them like hang on. Let's take her, make her the middle ground, and take him and make him the background. That way, there's just way more depth. Way more depth to this sort of setup of image here. And again, I would have them not be cutting off that page. So that way, there's just a bit more separation. The planes immediately make it feel a bit more three-dimensional, and it pushes it a bit further compared to them all just standing in a row like that. All right, let's go back to page 2. And again, so if you look at, let's merge this again. If you look at these people in this first panel, this right here, they're all in the same plane again. So you could really experiment more. I feel like this guy in the front, even though he is in front of them, you're basically just doing middle ground and background here, where he's the middle ground, the two people are the background. Just bringing this guy up a bit more. I don't know how close they are together. He could even be much further with them behind them. It would just immediately draw your eyes in more and create more space awareness. And we can apply this to the next panel as well. So something like that. And then what I would do in this panel is, what you've done here is you've made the tree a part of the background. Well, actually, I guess it's mostly background and middle ground again, because these guys here are on the same plane sort of as this tree. I would leave that, but what I would do instead is, you've got all these floating rocks. I would fucking Oops, I shouldn't have said that. Bring them up, you know? I didn't mean to curse. I'm sorry about that if any kids are watching. Just bring some of these rocks up, okay? Bring them right into our face. They are floating around, and you know, it just creates that depth. It's like full perspective, really. So just it really sort of bumps it up. Obviously, this is not a great version of what I meant to do there. This is just a rough draw over, but you know, so some more rocks in the foreground, especially going over the tree to really push that back, and then I would get really big, just like in the corners. This is a classic Greg Capullo thing he does, is he will, you know, if someone's talking, he'll, you know, you could just do a shot of someone over the shoulder like this, and you're talking to this person, but he'll like put the nose like right here, and the lips and the eye, really like just getting uncomfortably close as this person is talking to this guy here. That really pushes the depth. So just think about extreme foreground, middle ground, and background, and I think that will help a lot. Okay, moving on to the next person. And hopefully the sound has been okay for this. This is Jamie P. Let's take a look here. Okay, so again, we're going to play with middle ground, foreground, and background, or extreme foreground. So we see here that Batman is being shot by these gangsters or whoever they are. Clearly, you can't just do smudge marks like this on the side of the car. That's, you know, that's not really selling. Like, I guess you want that plane to be dark. If you want that plane to be dark, just make it black, you know, just make it solid black. And also, like, there would be, you got to think about shadows. There would be a shadow under this. The Batmobile itself is black, and the reason you use black is to draw your eye to something and shade it. So if you made, now that I look at this, I would not make this black. I would actually make it white, because we want to draw our eyes. The black would draw your eyes to these guys here shooting, because there's black behind them, the shadow of the van, because they're shooting a gun, right? So actually their light would be popping like this behind them, because the light of the gun is shooting them backwards. Also, the Batmobile would probably be lighting them from, let me zoom in. The Batmobile would probably be lighting them from above, so they would have some shadow on them there. Again, I'm doing this stuff super rough. This guy would probably have a shadow like this. This little hallway here. And then what I would do is, in the extreme foreground here, whatever this is, I don't know, let's say that we're looking at this from a rooftop. Let's do a classic, you know, water tower basically in the rooftop. And maybe like a chimney or two. And just push something really deep into the foreground here. Or you could even make it so someone's in Gotham City and we're seeing this through one of their windows or something like that. Just something to really pop in the back, in the foreground, just to really break it up. Or, you know, like a traffic light hanging here. Excuse me. A traffic light hanging here in the foreground, just to really push the image a bit, because without it, it just sits really flat. And obviously you really need to learn shading and how to use lighting effectively to push it. Now, currently this has been all moving in this direction. So the way the page should flow when you draw a comic book is it should be like an S, like this. I should be able to read through the comic like this, and it should all flow. But what you're doing here is you're going, ooh, and you're pushing me up when I should be being pushed this way. So switching to this view here, the only thing I would do if you wanted to keep it was, again, extreme foreground. I'd probably have the guys' heads here as Batman jumps. Maybe them still pointing a gun. Or another classic Capullo thing is and McFarlane, is you have a hand being like, oh no, he's jumping right at me, but in a space that doesn't cover Batman up too much. Also, it doesn't really look like Batman's jumping too much. Let me do a full redraw over on this panel, because this is not the shot I would choose. Let's do a white. So Batman's driving in his car. Gangsters are shooting at him. I would probably have the Batmobile has opened up, because I want to keep going this way, right, with my scene. Batman now has sprung from the car, and if he was going to jump, his legs would be extended. Maybe his hands are out, and his cape is obviously. Well, I wouldn't put his cape up there. I point his cape towards the Batmobile, because that's where he's been jumping out from. And then I'd have these guys being like, "Oh my god, freaking Batman is jumping right at me." And I wouldn't put too much in the background, because I don't want to take away from this scene, because Batman is going to be probably mostly in black with his cape. There'll probably be some shadow here, and the Batmobile obviously will be black. So when you break the shapes down like that, you know, if I suddenly had a super detailed background in here, you could have something there, but you really don't need it, because someone is only going to look at this very briefly. The only thing maybe is you could do sort of like a silhouette of the city in the background like this, just to lean more into what the shape would be. But I still feel like that draws attention away from the eye, but I'll leave it there for now. So now, again, you did a reverse shot where it was forward and then behind Batman. It's just that just doesn't work. It's not a cinematic flow. We want to keep this flowing. And I'm guessing it looks to me like Batman jumps out of the car and then eventually kicks somebody out of the car, I think. So if that's the case, the way you got to do it is we're moving the direction this way. We're coming down. See, even that direction I chose of Batman is just natural, because I'm making it go on that flow line there. So it flows, and then we want to keep the flowing, and we'll be going probably back down like this. So thinking about this line here, of the eye line flow, let's see what we would do. I think Batman would, let's see, he jumps, and maybe he's jumped over them, so they're like looking up at him, like, what? Why did he jump over us? Again, this is super rough stuff. Batman maybe is held onto the top of the truck. And we'll do a bit of force perspective where bring his feet probably like really far into the foreground like this or something. So Batman's jumped into the truck, and then let's spot our blacks. I mean, his foot would be completely blacked out like that. I would do black along the top here. Batman's the black mostly in shadow here. These guys are like, what the hell? That's not a great panel, but I'd have him do that, and then that means that it makes sense why he could swing around and then hit this guy out. So Batman jumps in, he swings, and then we want to keep this flowing like this. So Batman then, like, as he's been hanging on to the side, maybe he does like a back kick. Actually no, he would probably swing right around and then kick someone straight out. The truck, maybe just do a profile, and let's have Batman still holding onto the truck. Oops. guy's hands going up here, which is flowing along the flow line. Have the other guy looking like, whoa. And maybe Batman's cape is still fluttering, but he's kicked the guy out on the road like this. And then in the foreground, we can have, I don't know, a traffic thing and maybe a trash can or something like that. City again in the background. So this is not the best choice. I mean, let's see, he's driving along and then he jumps out of the car, he flies into the car, he spins around. I mean, maybe, I think what's confusing here is the way I've drawn panel 3. I might have his leg potentially going more sideways to like this to show that he's about to twist. Yeah, that's actually a lot better. So Batman is now twisting his body. I don't know if that makes any sense. His foot is like right here. He's twisting his body. Maybe even have him looking down at the panel below. And also looking at this guy here who he's going to kick. Yeah, that's so much better. Okay, so Batman, yeah, he jumps in. He's got his legs twisted. He's like kind of turning his arms a little bit. His cape is back here. Keep this guy pretty clear so you could see that he's looking. And then, you know what as well? This could pretty much be all silhouette. You could do like a Sin City style panel for that if you wanted to, where he kicks him out of the car. If you were going to do that, then I would push this guy back a bit further to separate him so you can see him clearer. Sorry, it seems like my program is messing up as I go. And this guy has just been kicked. So his head's backwards. And Batman's foot is like right there. And then I would have this guy's leg pointing towards where he got kicked out of. And now I look at the last panel, it looks like, I think they're on the street now, right? Because he's kicked him out of the van and he's punched him. Now, if you want Batman to punch him again, we have let's take a look at our shot selection here. We've got essentially a wide shot and then another wide shot, a medium close-up, a cool silhouette wide shot. Now we need to get into the goods of comics, which I think would be to follow this flow line. Batman can... Remember, the character's being kicked this way, though. I would probably have the guy in the extreme foreground... maybe a teeth or two flying, getting an absolute force perspective. Let's get the fist in a different position. This is Batman's fist. Up to his arm. He's a bit further. He's a bit too far. A bit too force perspective. You want to get a bit more in the face there. Something along those lines. Not particularly exactly that, but you want to get this panel to be a bit more in your face. You know what I might even do as well? I might even here, hang on. Let me cut and paste that. I might not even draw a panel around that. I might make this actually something really big on the page. Give me a second. Just want to make sure it all fits in. So there wouldn't be a panel in the background. It would be like this. So Batman's basically in the gutters here. looking cool. Probably have his face in shadow like this. Maybe his shoulder up here. And his hand like coming out. Another hand like this. Because he does not like to get punched in the face. And then Batman's fist would be potentially... There's his fist there. Might be coming over that panel a little bit. Probably bring this down in size a little bit. Like that. And there you go. It just adds a bit more action to the page. So if we take away everything I did... Oh, I drew right on the page. Oh, no, there it is. As you can see, if you just choose these wide shots every time, I don't feel like I'm in the action, you know? I want to get close and personal. But not all the time. Like, I think the wide shots really help. I hope that absolute jamboree mess was clear enough for you. And then the next page. Oh, it looks like he was looks like he was fighting on the bus the whole time. Well, that's okay. We could say Batman stayed on the truck. He just kicked one of the thugs out, and he punched the other thug, if that makes sense. That works. So he's still on the bus. Like, I don't want to say bus, truck. Let's have a look here. So Batman's been punched out by, I think, Bane or someone like that, and left on the road. I think that what I would do is, again, this is all on one plane, so you need to break up the planes. I'd have Batman. We just had a big close-up of him, someone hitting Batman, and we want to keep. We don't want to reveal who's punched Batman yet. Or do we? Batman's just punched a guy. So, out of nowhere, maybe have Batman. Maybe show the fist like right on his face. If it's Bane, it would be a huge fist. Get some shock lines going in because it's come out of nowhere, right? This fist is come out of nowhere. Batman's head's turned back a bit. He's in pain from this mega fist that's come off the page, which is making us read towards the next way. His Bane's arm is leading us into the next panel. You could have Batman fall like this. I just think that since it's at a higher, like since the road's going up, that's what's not working here. I think that this angle works fine if the road was like this, and then the buildings would be like this. And I would also make this truck stick out more. Like, let's just say the panel was this big, shrunk down, you know. I would have the full version of the panel here, and then inside the truck, I would do a reverse silhouette of Bane. You maybe not fully reverse silhouette, but he could still be more in the shadows. In the shadows. But you would want a teaser that he's just been hit by someone huge there. Maybe even just a preview of his mask. So we know, oh, it's Bane coming. And then this Batman here, I would make a lot bigger and use him as the extreme foreground option. So, let's say he lands on his side like you had him. And then have Batman's arm maybe pointing towards where he got hit from, just to show a bit of motion, and then using Batman's leg to bring us down more. The cape is a fun thing to use. When I drew Batman, I used his cape a lot to point direction. You can use the cape in the extreme foreground here. You could even have it going like this to really show motion that he got hit out. And then I would have some debris and dust flying to show that Batman whacked the floor, or maybe a classic comic book little whack mark leading towards where he fell out. And this is very scribbly, but yeah, there'd be more solid black in this area here. So Batman's been punched out of nowhere. Hits the ground if you want to use that shot. And then this is not a great reveal. I can see what you're doing is he's jumping off. I don't think Batman will be that ready to go yet. So let's see here. Oh yes, I forgot that I established this. When I was talking about rule of thirds before, foreground, middle ground, background, this is what I was talking about. I forgot I left these here. As you can see, there's objects in the foreground, middle ground, and then the white's the background. So now what we're going to use is another method called the rule of thirds, which is a cinematic technique, where you put down a grid, which splits everything into 9 squares evenly, or rectangles, and then you want to put your point of interest in any of these marks here. Let me use a different pen so you can see it. You want to have your eye focus anywhere here. You can have multiple things, like you got Jimmy Stewart's face here and the camera lens here. You could even have someone else back here and maybe something in the extreme foreground here. That gets a little wacky, but you don't have to use all 4. It's just a very easy cinematic technique to lay out a shot. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was positive space and negative space. So as you see here, that's how you really draw your eye to stuff. That's what we've been using this whole time. So let's use all 3 of those right now. This is a nice big panel to reveal that Bane is there. So let's just split this up into the rule of thirds. That's our plane that we want to use. Batman would be... We were going to use Batman as the middle ground. So maybe Batman is on the floor like this. Maybe he's wiping his face off because he got some blood on it or something. His cape is blowing. Maybe blowing towards who's in the foreground. And if it was Bane in the foreground, and you want to show his big beefy muscles, maybe have Bane... Actually, you know what? Let's move Batman to this point up here. Let's have a big fist here for Bane. Like this. And then have Bane's head here. With all the stuff coming out. Some really wacky stuff here. We can see that Bane has just jumped off. You don't really need to show that he's jumped off. We know there's a guy up here coming out. You know what? This is... I don't even know if I would go this tight. Obviously, the road's back here. Gotham City. It's okay. It's not the best shot there. I don't think the flow is... It's kind of working. So that's just one option. Let's try a different option, shall we? This is where the rule of thirds is. Batman's been knocked off. Maybe have use Batman in the extreme foreground. He's got his shoulder here. Maybe his hand's here like it's on the floor. He's upset. Yeah, this is working better. Let's do what's the flow here. Okay. Maybe tilt. Do a little tilt here. And then we'll have Bane, who's just jumps down. He looks like he's running there, so I guess to sell that he's jumped, his legs would be a little bent. Maybe even push his arm a bit further. Oh, that's too much. Or to show that he's jumped even more, you can put his arm back here. And his arm like here to show that he's jumped. And maybe in the extreme background we have the truck driving away. Maybe it's left some smoke. So Batman is looking at Bane here, who wouldn't be that round, but you know what I'm saying. And then definitely have some buildings here. This is a big panel, so you want lots of detail. So you'd have some buildings here. Maybe a few cars parked on the street, on the sides. Maybe even Bane is so heavy that he's caused a crack as he's jumped down in the pavement. And you could even break the panel up here, so Bane would be popping over panel 2. Then do a quick lighting pass. I mean, Batman is in the foreground, and generally objects in the foreground, it's good to make them the darkest objects, because when you look at a horizon and you see the mountain in the distance, it is not the darkest object, it is the lightest object, so that applies there. So Batman's looking. I don't know what the lighting on the street is, but if I was going to do it, probably just from above. Bane's light here, covering up his front. No, that's too dramatic. You want to see more Bane. So, just your bog standard lighting. Put a shadow below him. But the shadow won't be this black. It will be broken up by debris, some rendering lines and stuff like that. But just to know that it's there. And Bane's mask is black. And then I'd have his little tentacly pipe things popping over the panel as well. So I just think that's just a bit more of an exciting way to do it than just Bane hopping off there, you know? Get the camera close. Find some interesting angles. Have some fun. I hope that helps Jamie. All right, moving on now to Andrew. Let's take a look here. Now, I remember Andrew sent in some pages with a lot of nudity on them, so I had to choose the pages wisely. Okay, again, straight off the bat, looking at this, the big thing you're missing is just foreground, middle ground, and background. Like, there's some great stuff going on here. That's a really nicely drawn wagon. But if we took this character here, let's just copy and paste that. Put her in the extreme foreground and put her at a level of the rule of thirds. Not that extreme. I know you got to fit some dialogue in, but just pushing her more forward. I would actually also take the background here and push him into another one of the rule of third dots. So she would probably be up here. He would be around here. And if we're using the rule of thirds, okay, so she's on there. I would push him around this area here. Like that, just because it will break it up a bit better. Come on, program. Again, in the future, I'm going to try and get this working on my computer. It'll be so much better. You won't hear all the tapping on the iPad and all that stuff. So I would break that shot up just a little bit like that, just to make it pop a little bit more. This action in this panel definitely you could push. You could do the same thing. Push that guy more over here, so it's in one of the dots. This whole action here. You know, we don't need to see the werewolf's butt and legs. What we want to see is the cool action you've made. So really, I mean, I would even make the werewolf the foreground, the guy stabbing the middle ground, and the person in the background the background. So let's just do a full redraw over that and see how that goes. So thinking about the rule of thirds, I'm just gonna put the dots down. I don't usually bother with this anymore because I don't need all those extra lines. I can pretty much see where those are supposed to be split up. So I would have probably the werewolf in the absolute foreground. Maybe his hands still there like this, a claw. Have the guy stabbing into the werewolf in the front. And then on this dot here, I would have those people in the background. The trees in the big distance. And then shading. Stuff in the foreground is usually darker, so I would put these guys in dark like this. And then it keeps the background a bit more open. So that sort of spaces it up. I don't know how much room there is with dialogue. If you just need more room, then you just, you think about one of these dots becoming where the dialogue needs to go. Again, this is all... the other big thing I think is shot selection. You have a bird's eye view here, which is great. But this is a straight on... The top shot. This is a straight on shot. Let me remove my drawer over. This is a straight on shot. This is a straight on shot. This is a straight on shot. So without that variety of shots and without the use of foreground, middle ground, background, it just starts to create a sort of more amateurish basic level where I can see in your pencils you have the talent to push that. And I think it's a very simple solution to bring just a bit more intenseness to it. So let's say, okay, the card being a straight shot, I totally get, right? It's got to be that. So I wouldn't mess with this one at all. This is, it's an epic scene. There's this huge monster roaring over these people. They don't even look scared of this tiny thing. They're just kind of looking at it. I think what I would do with this is... because you're trying to show the scale of this big beast, right? Okay, let's do the dots again. Have the people in the foreground looking, maybe ready for a fight. Maybe they got a sword over their shoulder, ready for a fight, and then there's the big beast roaring here, right? You see its spooky face and its claws like up here and wings. And then what I would do is, I don't know if there's a campfire or something, but the number one thing to do with big spooky monsters is light it from below. So I don't know if they've got fire or anything like that, but if you can get this animal lit from below, say there's another claw here or something, and then you have its big spooky eyes looking down on them like a bear roaring, or like a T-Rex looking, like, in Jurassic Park when that T-Rex looks down at them and roars, it is frightening. What do we got here? It's like a wolf, so it'd have nose like this. And then push that jaw even more. And I would have strands of saliva in its mouth. You know, really sell that this thing is scary. So the fact that she ends up killing it in the next panel is even more impactful. I like the shot selection here. This is a bit hard to read though. I assume this is the muscles here. And she's covered in blood, I see. Yet the creature is not, there's not any blood on the creature anywhere. So you would have to make this an absolute bloodbath. Blood everywhere, all over the creature, all over her. It's a bloody panel, right? Yeah, this looks a bit too nice in here. You know, it almost looks like it's a toy, this. I think it's supposed to be like its rib cage. You know, she's chopped it up, so have a rib sticking out, you know, from different angles. It doesn't have to be anatomically perfect. Like, the way you've drawn this is almost surgical. And I don't think she's been surgical here. I think she's absolutely ripped it up. So just make it, you know, super messy. Little chunks everywhere. You know, chunks of flesh and meat. I wouldn't worry about showing, like, the anatomy strip like that. You know, in order to see anatomy the way you see it in a book like that, you'd have to, like, really, like, skin it and, like, really, you know, precisely remove it. Unless that's what you're going for, I don't know, but I wouldn't think so. Also, the problem with this panel here is you've got black here and here. So my eyes are looking here. I don't really know where I'm supposed to be looking. She's standing here covered in a bloody mess. What I would probably do to make the eyes look more in this area is show more of the black inside the hole of this person, because there's not going to be much light getting in there. With lots of blood around it. A little cast shadow here. I think the shadow's too long. Or am I making it muddier? I think I just made it muddier. Alright, lots of blood then. And make the blood very negative space. You know, positive, negative space. If we make the blood mostly white, and, you know, the blood will be dripping down over all this. Bleeding from everywhere, then it would add a lot more white into the space. And if there's a lot of lines on this lady, you know, I can see there's lots of rendering lines and detail on the hair. Then we'll focus more towards that. Alright, let's move on. Okay, again. Best thing you can do here. This guy, we don't need to see his full body. This is a POV shot, right? We're getting her POV as she's walked in. Let's bump him up. See how far we can push it. Maybe to like here. This person needs to be up more. You could just put them on the same eye level. That's just a classic way to show depth. You see how this person's eye here, if you have it like this. So if everyone's on the same eye level, creates the right depth. So you can see that this guy is not on the right eye level. And he looks like a big dude. Also, him facing towards that way. I don't know if I would do that. I think what I would do is, let's copy and paste it. Flipped it. I think I'd have him this way. And let's see where he should be on the eye line. in between the other two guys. Like so. And I think to push it even more, this guy's arm is just down here. I don't know if he's welcoming her in, your person, but maybe put his hand out just to get some forced perspective. You know, putting his hand out to say hello, coming from the body. I think this guy's head's a bit too big. And I would put this person in the background more in shadow because makes him a little bit more mysterious. And then in terms of eye drawing, maybe have some black lighting from the shadows in here. See, there would be shadows underneath them, but I wouldn't do full black underneath them. I never like to do a full black shadow, and I'd like to avoid it if I can, and really get the background to draw the focused. Since this guy's more in the foreground, I'd put more shadow on him. Something like that. Let's take a look at the other panels. Let's see here. Again, middle ground, foreground, background. This first panel here is all middle ground, background. So you can just get this car much bigger on the page. This is just one plane, which is fine. You know, you don't have to do, these rules don't apply to every panel, so you can just keep that this way. I don't think for this panel though, she should be in the center. I might push her more to the rule of thirds, off to the side a little bit, like this. Watch any documentary, any modern documentary. Look where they put the camera. You'll rarely see the camera with the person right in the middle of it. They'll always be pretty much on the rule of thirds. Now my eye is drawn to her, and she can have speech bubbles here. Okay, let's take a look at some of your rendering here. Now, if you do rendering like this, so, okay, let me show you some rendering techniques. When we're rendering, what we're trying to do is we have black, and there's just different levels of gray, right? We want to do this value, this value, this value, and eventually white. So what you're trying to do up here is you have her mask. I'm gonna draw on her forehead here. So this is your mask shadow you laid out, saying that it's going in there. But since you're just going like this with a dead line, it doesn't work, because the way light works is that it's not just this value directly into this value. It's this value into this value, into this value, into this value. So the way you do that is these lines need to change. They need to go from a thin to a thick. So if I just zoom out more, so you can see it. You can see I'm making a thin to thick line into the black. So now I've done these values. I haven't just done one value into this. So like I said, let me try and do it somewhere where it's clean. This is my, let me do a better shape. This is my shape and shadow, right? It's a weird like ball thing. If I just take a flat pen and go, it doesn't look right, right? Like it looks like there's a clear break line between all this. So it looks very flat. But if I suggest that the values change and get thicker, let me zoom out a bit more. And all I'm doing is I'm applying more pressure on my pen as I go towards the light. That's terrible rendering, so I'm going to undo that. I think it's because I was too zoomed in. Let me zoom out a bit more. What you're trying to do is have some pressure to change that thin to thick. So now this looks a bit better. You can even push it even more. I do this all the time. I go back in with a white brush and I just bring some of those values out even more. So now it looks like there's even more of a thin to thick change. Does that make sense? Because when you just have those dead lines like that, it just looks flat. And I would use that all over. Like, see how these lines here are mostly dead. Really get those thin lines going. Hopefully that helps. You can see it clearly on here. These lines here. I wouldn't... And they're so far apart as well. And the further apart you put the lines, the lower the value will be. So if I was going to do this, I would curve the shadow a little bit more, like so. And then... push those thins too thick, and then again I can already see there I put too much shadow down, and it's a common mistake I do all the time. So I would just break into it, and then there, boom. Now you're rendering. Now you're pulling light into dark. So if I look at this, I think you're doing exactly what I used to do. I used to put too much shadow, so because you're like, oh, the plane changes here. This is all in darkness, right? So you've made this all black, but it's not all in darkness. It has to blend into it. So if you take away half that darkness, right, and then you come back in and start rendering it out. Yeah, I'm not doing a good job on my renders today. And then let's just break him up a bit more. Oh, I know why, because I'm not on a monochrome layer. Ah, that's why. Now it looks like it's going more into darkness. And also, there's another trick you can do. This is more advanced level stuff, which I've been doing recently, is I'll take away the bottom bit of the form, and then I'll just put some gray lines over it. Probably bring in back a bit more of the shadow. Just leave a bit of white there. Again, this is a terrible example, but that's called reflective light, but we're not going to get into that today. Yeah, so just try and pull these lines into the darkness to get a nice rendering. Because you're doing it like these lines on her butt cheek here, they aren't doing that. They're creating the depth of the form. But if you just like, so this works what you've done here, but yes, you can see up here this doesn't work. Also, this line's bigger than this line. They're so far apart. Like, I could fit easily extra lines in between all of them. And you want to make them nice and rendering into the object, not just a single dead line. But it's all style choice at the end of the day, as long as you have it in mind. Let me actually make a monochrome layer. See if I can show my rendering a bit better here. There we go. So my pen is set to be used on a monochrome layer. That's very rough stuff, but and there's so many different ways to. Oh, I should put my loose pen on as well. So many different ways to render out shapes. Best thing to do is just look at your favorite comic book artists and see how they do it and just experiment yourself. Because what we're doing here is, since we only have the options of black and white, we have to create gray. And the more thicker this goes, the darker gray it will be. The thinner it goes, the lighter gray it will be. So I wanted a really light gray, like this. But you got to think about, a lot of people don't think about the transition. So yeah, you've got a light gray here, but if you start making each line thicker as it goes, then you've got a gradient into eventually black. Jim Lee does this with every render. If Jim Lee has, let's say, Jim Lee's drawn a Jim Lee. This is a terrible arm, but Jim Lee bicep, right? This is Wolverine. Snick, snick, snick. Okay, Wolverine just popped his claws, right? The lighting is coming from above. So we would light his muscles from below. He's got his thing here. And it's coming off a little bit into the side here like this. That's just black and white, right? That's black and white. But if you want to add gray into everything, then what Jim Lee does is that if he starts up here, it will be a very thin line. But as he goes, the line will get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, because it adds a great change of plane. So use that as you will. I use that all the time in my work. I also have been really enjoying doing this very Greg Capullo style of rendering recently, where you just keep the pen held and they connect like this, and that can get thicker and thicker as well. It's more of a scratchy, cartoony style. Okay, I made an absolute mess of that. I hope that helps on your page. Let's move on. All right, the final one we got here is from my boy Reese. Shout out to Reese, who is now actually a full-time working comic book artist, drawing Star Wars over at Dark Horse. Congratulations, Reese. Let's take a look at this page. Again, immediately, what do I see here? Foreground, middle ground, background. Especially on this panel, the first one. Let's make this a red pen so I can draw. So these bars here that are releasing this smoke that you've used a brush with, which you know me, I hate those cheaty brushes. I would bring these so much further into the foreground. I would have, and I know you got to show that door there. So I would have one like this, this. So much further in the back, in the foreground. And then what I would do to show the door is I would have the mist coming out and revealing everything around it, so you can see the mist and you can keep this door. Also, since that line is in front of the door, it's distracting, so this would really open up the door here as a point of focus for the story. And then I'd add more people here so it looks a bit fuller. Maybe a table over here where they're working on. So just using extreme foreground there to break it up. Kicking the door here is fine. The only thing I would add is maybe some focus lines and splinters popping up into the extreme foreground. Her ankle is a bit too thin there. It's a fine, the angle's fine there. I might do actually more of a profile foot. like that. And then have some letters over it, doof. And then going into here. This looks like it's been squashed. You know, like if I render it out, it's like someone sat on a Pringles can. So I would get this more rounded. And I also think that you can push that gun head way more into the extreme foreground like this. So you really get the bullets right in your face. And I see you've got bullet shells around, but they don't seem to be coming from anywhere. So I would put like a bullet ejector down here, and I would have you so that they are flying all from a source. John Romita Jr. did this all the time when he worked on The Punisher. You want to see these bullets fly. And you know what? I'd have 2 ejectors. Why not? And it's just ejecting bullets all around her. You wouldn't need cases up here. That's ridiculous. Just have them shooting her like this, and like maybe even in a pile below her. That's the ridiculous comic side, is that she shot so many bullets that they're just piling up around her feet. And the other thing I would do is, she's shooting a huge gun, which means that she is in constant movement as this gun is shooting. So her hair should be reacting to that. They should be floating around. And I think also I might put her face down a bit as well. Just because faces, when they're down, you can really play with the eyebrows more. Let me turn this black. Maybe that will help. And then the hair. Reacting to her shooting. Like that. It just creates, you can even put that face down even more than that if you wanted to. Doesn't matter which one. They both work. I just think the head down. You know what? The other one where it wasn't down as much was better. Yeah, that's much better. And you know what? I might even have her hair flowing across her face. No, I think it was actually better when it was flying backwards. She's just shooting here. Now, this hand is boring because it's straight on. And I don't think if you're holding something like this, you would have just a straight on hand. I think what you're missing here is you did the front right, but we need to see the reverse palm side of her hands. So her thumb would actually be here, not here. And then that was able to push her arm back in the forced perspective that you're trying to do. And her hand being hidden here, I think it should be a bigger hand up here. Because you're just making the gun up, right? Push that hand forward, get that forced perspective going, which changes where her arm's coming from. This is all full of bullets. And then her hips be here. This leg's fine here. I think that leg can be pushed out a little bit, like that. That doesn't look very good. I guess down more. I'd probably have some smoke or something down here because the room's been full of smoke, right? And she just kicked the door open, so I think there's a lot of black on her. So I think I would use some white. To bring her more focus. And I do a slight underlighting to her because of the gun. Okay, so that's what I would do with that. And then the problem I have with this panel, look, I'm very proud that you've done extreme foreground here with this guy and this guy. But this guy is too big. And I feel like she just burst in the room, right? These guys are not reacting like they're all being shot at. You need someone with their arm going over their face, like, oh my god, we're being shot at. Maybe instead of this being a guy here, you would have someone putting their hand out, like, we're being shot, you know? And this gun here looks very strange. The pose is fine. You know me, I'm always beating you up. Because I know you got the potential for greatness. Actually, you know what? You can make this whole shot silhouette. You can have her hair to show movement. She's jumping with the big gun. Could you even have her pointing the gun down like this? And then using the movement of the bullets flying everywhere. Maybe someone's getting wrecked down there by bullets. Smoke is flying, etc. I think that just makes the pulls the eyes a bit better. I would make all this black. I wouldn't have all this silly grey you do. And below, some rubble from the door and the bullets that we made before. I don't know how violent you could have got, but you could have put something in the extreme foreground here, like someone getting their head blown off or something, or part of their body. Yeah. But, you know, obviously, mate, it's a great page regardless. I just really, you know, this is a style choice. I just hate all this grey. It just upsets me like this. Because as I was just talking about values, like building towards that with solid lines to me is far more skillful, impressive than just chucking a bunch of white and creating grey, or just using actual grey itself. That's a style choice. You know, comic books have changed. People have changed. Maybe I have to change. All right, everybody. I hope this video actually recorded. I have no idea. I hope that helped. I hope you could hear me through this whole thing. And if you would like me to go over your art and review it like I've done here, you can find me on patreon.com/Will Robson. And that is patreon.com/Will Robson. You can join as little as only £2 a month to join the server, so I can do a draw over. There's also a £5 tier where you get a chance to win a free signed comic book by me every month, and the higher tier, which I think is 10 or 12, means you get a free signed trading card every single month from me, and also you get entered into a monthly giveaway where I give away free original art. So, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll have a better setup